This video is going to demonstrate how to do more advanced animations using Photoshop. In Blackboard, go under Demo Files, scroll down to Advanced Animation Demo and click on that link to download the files. Once those are downloaded, it should be a zip file that you can double click to unzip, and then inside of there is going to be a series of PSDs, so go ahead and open those inside of Photoshop. You'll see that there are a few different files here. The one that we are going to start with is the Smart Object Start. If you do not have your timeline available, then go up to Window and then Timeline, and then it will appear. All right, so before I actually start doing anything with animation here, what I want to explain is what is going to happen in this video. And in fact, let me just show you an example of it. So in this video, what is going to happen is this blue circle is going to do an arc and kind of come down here, and then text is going to appear. So what's essentially happening with this circle, in order to kind of do like that nice arc like that, what we're going to do is actually be rotating this outside green circle that has the blue inside of it. So just to show you, if I select both layers, and you don't have to do this part, just watch. If I select both layers and I hit Command or Control T to rotate, and when I rotate, it really looks like only the blue circle is rotating, right? That's really kind of the only one that is rotating here. To make it a little bit easier for you to see, let me hide the green layer and do that again. So I have both of them selected. So the blue circle is still moving and the green circle is still moving, but because I hide the green one, you can't really tell what's going on. So that is what we're going to be doing here. So in order to make that happen, remember, in order to transform anything, it needs to be a smart object. So we're going to have both of these layers selected, and we're going to right click and choose Convert to Smart Object. All right, so now the circle is inside of the other circle and they're in this smart object. So I'm going to hit Create Video Timeline. Now the only thing about this is that the green circle is still visible, and I'm going to show you how to take care of that in a minute, but let's first focus on rotating the circle. So I want to do the transform because I want to rotate it, so I'm going to click the stopwatch to put in the first keyframe. And then let's just say we come down to, maybe just before 1 second. So I'm like at 27 frames. And I'm going to hit Command or Control T. I'm going to rotate it maybe to about right there, because remember, text has to come out of this. And then I'm going to hit Return. And so if I look, okay, so I got that animation happening, right? Well, I don't want the green circle. So the only thing I have to do is go inside of this smart object and hide the green circle layer. So I'm going to double click on that smart object, and then I'm just going to come in and hide the green and then save this. So Command or Control S, and then close the smart object. So now whenever it plays, it does the arc. So you're kind of like, it's almost like a hack, but it's still getting the job done and it's still doing exactly what we want it to do. Now we're going to do this same idea with the text coming out from the circle. So if you watch, it looks like the text comes out of the circle. It's really not doing that. What it's doing is using the smart object kind of almost like a mask. So it's kind of just like a more creative way to do masks. So the first thing that I need to do is come to about right here. So I need to go to wherever my circle is done animating, and I'm going to activate the type tool, and I'm going to just, you can type anything, but I'm going to type blue circle designs, and feel free to style this however you want. We'll just kind of choose something quick. Oh, that is super tiny. All right, so we'll leave it like that, and I'm going to leave a little bit of room because I also am going to have, so after Blue Circle Designs comes out, then it also says Oakdale, PA. All right, so just wanted to kind of show you that part as well. So blue circle designs and then the Oakdale PA. So we're going to leave a little bit of space after it. All right, so we had to get the circle done first. We had to get the circle done first because we didn't know where to put this text in because we didn't know when the circle was done animating. Now that we have the text in, now what we need to do is put a rectangle around this text, which is going to act almost like our green circle was acting for the blue. Also notice that it put the blue circle designs right here at this mark. So that's perfect because we don't want it to even, like, it doesn't need to be there until that time, right? It did extend the timeline just a little bit more than what we needed to, so I'm going to put my cursor over that edge, and when the cursor changes to the black bracket with the double arrows, I'm going to click and drag that in, and it will snap to the end of the other one. All right, so now I'm going to take my rectangle tool. I don't need a stroke, and I'm just going to put a fill on it. I am going to put a fill of a different color. It doesn't matter what the color is because we won't eventually see it. It needs to overlap the circle and cover all of your text. If it does not overlap the circle, then it will not look like it's coming from the circle. All right, so you have to put it in that way. Okay. Once you get that created, now you are going to select in your layers panel both the rectangle one and the blue circle designs layers. Right click and convert to smart object. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing, but here we're going to do just something, little something different. Let's go ahead and double click on the smart object to go inside of it. And when you look here, let's make them both the same size, like the same length. So if yours wasn't the same length, then you can just click right here and drag it out to the end. Now, I don't want this rectangle anymore, right? So let's hide the rectangle. And what should be happening here, I'm going to get the move tool, and you can just watch here for a second. Let me actually zoom in so it's a little bit easier to see. I am going to take this text, and if you think about the way that it animates, it actually is starting off here, right? It's starting off the side and then kind of coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up rulers. So I'm going to hit Command or Control R to bring up my rulers, and then I'm going to drag a guide to where that S should end. And that's just for me to see later. So this is actually my ending point. So I am going to open up the video layer for Blue Circle Designs, and I am going to hit Transform. But I actually don't want it to, I don't want it to look like this at the beginning, right? And let's go to, let's keep like the timing about the same, so like 27 frames. I actually want it to look like this at the end, so I'm actually going to put a keyframe right here. And then I'll go back to the beginning keyframe, and with my move tool, I'm going to hold down Shift and just click and drag it off of the screen. So that way it animates in like that. Perfect. Now I can save this, close it. If I come back here, I'm going to play, and there you have it. So then you do the Oakdale, PA, or wherever location you wanted to put it, or you could do like a tagline or something. You would do that the same way. So okay, so again, we need to see when it stops animating. So it stops animating about right there. All right, so same thing. I'm going to take my type tool and I'm going to write Oakdale, PA. Put a space in there. I'm going to make this font smaller. And I think in the original one, I think I lowered the opacity in the design in the video I showed you guys. So let me just see. Yeah, maybe a little bit. So I just made it 70%. The way I did that pretty quickly was, again, I still have the move tool active, so I hit the 7 key on my keyboard and that jumped the layer opacity to 70%. All right, so that looks good. And then let's again take a rectangle tool, and this has to overlap Blue Circle Designs because I kind of want it to look like it's coming from the top there. And then same thing, select both of these layers, right click. I'm going to try to right click over. There we go. Right click. Now you can see the convert to smart object. Double click on that smart object, hide rectangle 2, and then again, guys, we are just repeating that process. I'm going to zoom in some more. Go back to your move tool. open up Oakdale, PA, activate the stopwatch for transform. Okay, so this is where we want it to be at the end, right? So I'm going to go to about 27 frames. And again, I'm watching it down here. I'm going to hit the keyframe indicator, the keyframe icon, add keyframe icon because this is where I want it to end. And then at the beginning, I'm just going to click and drag up. All right, so let me do that step again because I think I did that a little bit too fast. Okay, so I'm just backing up. All right, so I need to put in the keyframe. So I'm going to hit the stopwatch, and that's going to allow us to start putting in keyframes. But I don't want it to look like this at the beginning. I want it to look like this at the end. So I'm going to go to 27 frames. There we go. And then I'm going to hit this icon, which is going to add a keyframe for me. So that's adding a keyframe right there, because this is where I want it to be at the end. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to click and drag while holding shift and just drag it up. So now it kind of does this animation. Okay, so again, I'm going to save, close this, and now my animation should be complete. Okay, kind of neat. And if you didn't like exactly where that Oakdale, PA started, then you can kind of adjust it. Or you could take it a step further, maybe something that would be a little bit classier, is to also do opacity. So let's say right here, like, so what I just did was with these arrows, you can jump back and forth between your keyframes that you've already placed. So I want to go to the second keyframe, and I'm going to activate the opacity stopwatch. So that means I want it to be this opacity, which is 70% right here. But maybe at the beginning, so I'm going to hit this arrow right here. So that way I go back to the first keyframe, and I'm going to hit the stopwatch here. And then at this point, I want it to be 0%. So that means it is going to fade in, like it's going to also do a fade as it animates down. So let's take a look at it now. Yeah, so it's kind of doing that fade in. So I'm going to play it. There you go. And then you kind of have like this nice little intro design animated for a company. Okay, now this was a pretty simple logo, but you could have made this any logo, right? Like you could have made it anything. I was just trying to show you the arc. All right, and so then again, you would just render out this video whenever you are done. So go ahead and save this Photoshop document. I'm going to close it just to kind of free up some space here, but you could definitely, you should definitely save it. All right, the next one I want to go over is the fades. So this one is kind of interesting because it's kind of like a way to do a quick slideshow. So I want to show you how to do this, and you can do this with many images as you want. So again, let's go ahead and hit create video timeline. And this one doesn't need smart objects. This one is just fading between two images. So again, I'm going to kind of zoom in here so you can see it. Now, if you're going to do this fade, if you're going to make it like so that this image just fades into the other one, then they have to be on the same video layer. So in order to do that, you actually have to trim them down. So I am going to put my cursor at the end of wind and click and drag it in, and I'll make it something like that. So if you look, like the other one is there, we just don't see it, right? So I'm going to trim this one down some, about the same amount of time, and then I'm just going to click and drag it up here. Okay, just click and drag. And so now Photoshop calls them video group, and they're still there, but instead of this like harsh cut, like between that image and the other one, I want it to fade. Well, if you click on this icon right here, Photoshop allows you to do fades, and they're already built in. So the one that you probably want is a crossfade, which is this. And I will tell you that you can kind of manipulate this a little bit. So you can, and you have to do this kind of slowly because I've seen it kind of like mess up a little bit, but then you can kind of extend the fade however you want, and then watch what happens. Okay, it just nicely fades between, it's almost like you could have done the same thing keeping them separate, but like you would have to animate the opacity, but this just is so much easier. You can do like a fade in, a fade out if you wanted to, like, fade with black, fade with white, fade with the color. So you can do them at the beginning and the end too. So like if you just wanted to fade to nothing, then you could do that. So this one was pretty quick, but it is pretty valuable. Now I have these images filling my entire screen. you could do this, like, let's say you want to do something a little bit interesting. Maybe you've got an image of a computer or a TV or a phone right here, and maybe you want to, like, these images are kind of sliding through or fading through on that device, then you could do that there. It doesn't have to be the entire screen. Okay, so again, I would save this one for if I were you. All right, we're going to save this one for last. We're going to go to the clipping mask. And for the clipping mask one, if you look, we've got the gradient colors, and then we have just the word gradient. And what I want to have happen here, let me show you. I'm going to close this one because we're done with that one. For the gradient, it is just going to do this. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of that squash and stretch too, but look at the color, look at the gradient in the background. Okay, and then we kind of do the squash and stretch there. So it kind of adds a little bit of fun style to it. It's like boing, like you have to add that in there. All right, so if you're going to do a clipping mask, the first thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that whatever is going to be your window is the lower layer, and that's what we have here. So I'm just going to hold down Option or Alt and put my cursor between the two layers and click. And now this gradient is coming through the word gradient, like the color gradient is coming through the word. So I'm going to make sure the gradient colors layer is selected, and I have the move tool active. I'm just going to click and drag, and you can see how like that color is changing, right? And so like the actual color of it is green. So I'm going to position it just so like the end of that blue purple is right on the G. That's where I want it to be. And then I'm going to open up gradient colors, and I'm going to activate the position stopwatch. And then I'm just going to go like maybe, let's do 2 seconds. And then again, with my move tool, I'm just going to click and drag to the other side so you can see where the actual font color is starting. So I want to make sure that it just ends on the yellow. And there I have it. Okay, so it's very subtle, but sometimes subtlety is all that you need in order to make something look good. Now, if we go back to that video, a little touch of style that was added to this is the bounce here. Okay, so let's look at it. Now, this is an exaggerated bounce, and this is kind of an animating technique here. So let's look at what it does. It gets taller, and the text kind of scrunches in. All right, so that's what we need to do first. We need to make that text get smaller and have it kind of scrunch in. So we are going to be animating the word gradient. Now I don't want to do that until maybe about, right here. I don't want that to happen like right away. So I'm going to put the timeline indicator, the playback head right around here. So I'm at like 26 frames, and I'm going to hit the transform stopwatch. And then I'm going to move a little bit. And by move, I mean I'm going to move the timeline playback head, and I'm going to hit Command T or Control T, and I'm going to hold down. I'm gonna hold down Shift first. I'm just deciding which way I want to transform it first. I'm gonna hold down Shift, and I'm just gonna click and drag the top bar up. All right, so you have to do this. You have to hold down Shift, or else it tries to grow proportionally. The other thing that you want to do is go to one of the sides and hold down Option and Shift and kind of pull it in. Okay, and then hit return. All right, so let's see. Okay, so look, we got that kind of like squeezing in, and now we need it to kind of fall back down. So it's going to spread out and get real thin. Okay, so it's going to spread out and get real thin. So we're going to go, so let's kind of keep this timing similar. So 6, 7, 8, 9, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's about 7 frames, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're at about 1 second and 10 frames in, right? And if you're not at the same spot I am, as long as you're kind of close, because we can always drag this around. So same thing, Command or Control T, and I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to squish this down, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and Option or Alt, and I'm going to drag this out, and then hit return. And now that's probably wider than what I needed to do it, but Look at that. Look at how fun that kind of is. Bloop, 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 bloop. Okay, now the last thing I needed to do is kind of go back. And you, like if I were you, I would kind of keep doing the bounce effect, you know, to maybe it doesn't go as tall the next time and it doesn't go as wide the next time. But the easiest thing to do here is just to make it go back to the original keyframe. So to do that, first we want to put a keyframe in here. So I'm going to hit the keyframe icon. I'm going to right click on this first keyframe and I'm going to choose copy. And then I'm going to right click on this keyframe and choose paste. There we go. All right, so let's go back to the beginning and play it. There we go. So just kind of like a fun little bounce there. And it really is, you know, if you didn't like the timing of it, then you could always adjust how close or how far the keyframes are. So again, please save this and then go ahead and close it. All right, this one. So this one is animating layer masks. So let me bring up the video for what this one looks like. All right, let me make it a little bit smaller. So this one is kind of like a travel tourism, you know, come visit Croatia. Croatia awaits. And so what's really happening here is, I know this looks like it's just a white gradient. It's actually a layer mask on this layer. And it is just showing the text. And by showing the text, what it's actually doing is it's masking away the image right here. So there's actually a certain way that you can do this, and you know, I'm going to show you one way, but there are other ways that you can do this with masks. All right, so we have the waterfall, we have Croatia awaits. Let's go ahead and create the video timeline. The waterfall does need to be on top. Okay, so right there is our Croatia awaits if I hide the waterfall. So you have to do it in these steps because using a gradient on a layer mask can get a little bit tricky. So do it in these steps. So you have the waterfall. So let's select the waterfall layer, and then you need to add a layer mask. So I'm going to hit the layer mask icon. All right, so I have my layer mask on here. And as a review, anywhere that this mask is white is going to show this layer. Anywhere where it's black or a value of gray is going to hide this layer. So what we're going to do is use a black to white gradient. So I'm going to get my gradient tool, and up in the top I want to make sure the opacity is 100%. I want to make sure that I'm on the linear gradient, and I want to make sure that I'm on black to white. All right, so I am going to start on the left. I'm going to click, I'm going to drag, I'm going to hold down shift. So I want to keep this gradient completely even. And so now what it looks like I just did was, it looks like I just put white on this side. Well, that's not how we want it, right? So let's invert it. So we're just going to hit Command or Control I, and that's going to invert it. Now you had to do it in those steps because we do need more black over on this side. And if we would have done it without the inversion, then it wouldn't have created more black on that side. So I was just trying to save you a step there. All right, so we have that. So now what I want to do is I want to animate the mask, right? Well, I can't animate the mask without making it look like the image is moving because they're linked with this chain link icon. So let's click on that chain link icon to unlink them. And then let's make sure our mask is active. So there's these white corners around the mask to let you know that it's active. Let's grab our move tool, and we are going to move it, like click and drag, and you want to hold down shift, drag it all the way to the right, and right there is good. Whoops, I dragged mine too far. Okay, shift. Okay, I'm just going to leave a little bit of it on the frame. Now it looks like I got rid of the image, right? It looks like I moved the image. Well, I didn't. If I hold down shift and click on that mask, the image is still there. It's just the mask is moved. So what I need to do is fill this area with white on my mask. So I'm going to take my rectangle marquee, make sure my feather is set to 0. I'm going to select this entire area, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and then fill with white, and then hit OK. And there we go. Command D. All right, so Command or Control D to deselect. I'm going to go back to my move tool. So let me just show you guys. The gradient is still there, right? If I let go, see how the gray starts to kind of come into the gradient? I just had you do those steps so that way you could fill it one way or the other with white or black. Okay, so here's where we are. And now we are ready to animate. So let's animate the let's animate the waterfall. And you'll see like we still have position, we still have opacity, we still have style, but then we have some options for layer masks. So with the layer mask, we are going to animate the position. So we want it to start here. So let's go ahead and activate the stopwatch, and then let's move it to 1 second or so. And then let's click the keyframe again, and then we're going to take our move tool. Again, make sure the mask is active, and then click and drag. Okay, and then I'm going to probably drag a little bit more until more of that white kind of comes in. And then there we go. We kind of have that mask animating in. And I think I actually wanted to just kind of wait a second before it starts animating. So I'm going to select both of these keyframes and I'm going to move them down just a little bit. So that way it's just this nice image here. And then it starts animating. So here we go. And there you have it. All right, so that is how I would kind of go about doing that if that's what I wanted to do. And like I said, like try to combine some of these. You don't have to do these individually like I did. You can combine any of them. This is just to try and to give you some additional ideas for things that you can do. But that is it for animating the advanced animation with masking and smart objects and clipping masks. Hopefully you found some of that helpful. Maybe it gave you some ideas for things you could do. Don't forget about the fades. Okay, the fades are pretty helpful. So a lot of information there, a lot of stuff that you can do with animation, and I hope that you kind of have some ideas, some thoughts going. If not, there is plenty of inspiration online that you guys can look up. And as always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask.